In my previous video, I show you the squeak that my Golf would make on startup. In this video, I finally found the source, and I also replaced my leaking valve cover gasket. Well, since I know I need to take the intake manifold off to get to the valve cover, I might as well start that. I don't know how far I'm going to get tonight, but I do know I'm not going to drive it until I get that squeak fixed, so let's get to it. So I'm going to take the intake tube off the air box. So the throttle cable needs to come off. Just pull it off the grommet here. Take that off, that off, that off. And that should allow it to come off there. Sit that aside. And of course, this hose can come off. And this one as well. There's a hose right back here that is connected. It is connected with a worm clamp. Yeah, there's the hose there. It connects just below where the throttle cable was connected. So that needs to come off. That was a coolant hose. So let me put something under there to catch it. There's also another hose right behind the one I just showed you. There's also a little connector just underneath the throttle body here that I need to disconnect, and a hose just to the right of it. So right behind this hose, there's another one. But for me, it'll be easier to disconnect it right there. Let me focus it. It'll be easier for me to disconnect it right there, so that's what I'm going to do. There is one more thing I need to disconnect, which is this here. And I think I can just unscrew the 10mm that's underneath it. All right, I think that's it. I think I can remove. Damn it. I think I can remove the upper intake manifold now. So I'm going to remove these hex bolts that are here, in there, and in there. And then there's a bracket that holds it underneath on the backside. Alright, if you go around the back of the upper intake manifold, there are 2 bolts holding it in. I hope you can see that. And I need to take those off, and then I should be home free. Alright, so let's see if I got everything free. Almost everything. So there's a very similar bolt as the ones that hold this on underneath here. So let me just take that off. I realized there's a better way to handle this. I'll show it later in the video when I'm putting it back on. Now I can set this aside. So now I got a better look at the valve cover leak. It's not leaking so much on the front, but if you look in the lower right corner of the screen, you see that it's leaking. You can also see it some on the top here. So I'm going to take that off. I don't have the parts yet, but maybe I can see something in there that lets me know what's making the squeak. And it seems to be held on like most valve covers. Those 10mm nuts onto those studs there. So I'm going to go ahead and knock it off. But I took this one off. Oh, there's two of them. So it's probably the same way over here. On each end of the valve cover, there are two sets of nuts. On one end, there's a bracket. On the other end, there's a cover with timing marks on it. And the valve cover's off. This is my first look under one of these engines, but look at this. What is this? It looks like silicone. Wow, this is a hard gasket. Well, that's as far as I'm prepared to go tonight. But these lobes look great. That's wonderful. This is my first look at the cams on a MK4 Golf 2.0. And I do like single overhead cams, but these lobes look great. And let's see. Yeah. So the valve cover was leaking. Now that I have a lot of stuff off and I can see better, the valve cover was also leaking on the front. So I'm glad I'm doing this. Since I know the squeak is coming from the timing component area, I had to jack up the car and remove the wheel on the passenger side. I've been asked a few times where I jacked the Golf up. Well, this is where I jacked the front up. I jacked the back up using the tow hook. I also placed a piece of wood between the jack and the spot on the transmission that I used to jack it up. Just in case something goes south, I'm going to make sure I go ahead and set it at top dead center. I put the valve cover back on so that I could put this guide on so that when I put the engine at top dead center, I can align it with this mark that is here. But what I'm going to do is rotate the engine to see if there's anything obvious that would make the noise I'm hearing. So I got my 19mm 12 point. I'm just going to rotate and see if I hear anything. Well, I was not able to duplicate the sound. But before I tear everything apart and do a whole new timing belt job, I am going to look at the little timing belt guard that is just in there and see if maybe it was slightly bent and is rubbing up against the water pump gear or something else, because I've seen that other people have had similar issues after doing a timing belt job. So I'm going to figure out how to get to those shields and see if I can bend them back away from the timing components. And that would save me a lot of time because the car does run fine. It just makes that nasty, annoying squeak. So now I'm under the car where the crankshaft pulley is and where the accessory belt tensioner is. And I'm going to try and remove that cover there. But to do that, I'm going to go release the belt tensioner and see if that gives me access to all the bolts. That did give me a little more clearance. It looks like it's only held on with 3 10mm bolts, and the camera angle will be difficult, but I'm going to take it off and see if that's my problem. Yeah, I had to pull out my 1/4" drive ratchet to get to this top one, but I'm finally able to twist it out using my index finger and my middle finger. And it is a pain, but it's coming. Well, looks like I gotta take off the crankshaft pulley too. I did not want to have to do that. All right. All right, you want to be stubborn. All right, with human muscle, I was able to break it free. Let's see, will this come off now? Should. There we go. Looks like I gotta remove the accessory belt tensioner as well. It is held on by 3 bolts. Yeah, it's held on by those 3 bolts there, and I think they're all 13 millimeters. All right, that should allow me to drop the timing cover off. And I just did. Don't see any obvious signs of rubbing, but this one's separating up top. I guess years and water have caused it to rust and start to split. This was close to hitting a pulley, but I don't think it was actually touching, as there's, I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of rubbing that was happening there. But this one is a little bent, but again, I don't see signs. I don't know, maybe that's rubbing, but it's also rusting, so I'm gonna look into getting new ones. So I think I have a plan. I'm gonna put everything back together, but leave those covers off to see if some pulley or gear was rubbing on those covers. I still need to get a valve cover gasket and maybe a new gasket for the intake manifold. But that's the plan. I'm gonna put everything back together, start the car, and see if it still makes that noise. And while the valve cover's off, I might as well give it a once over because it is pretty filthy as well. Damn boy, why you messing up your Nike socks like that? Now for the part where it matters that it's clean. And there is some RTV there. All right, that's most of the gunk off. I'm going to get a cleaner rag and go over it one more time. All right, I'm almost certain that this is the right gasket, but let's make sure. Yeah, that looks right. And I also got one for the intake manifold. So this is a FailPro gasket picked up at Advanced Auto. There's the info on it there. And if I remember, I'll put a link in the description on where you can order it. So the side with the big hump goes near the cam gear, and the side with the semicircle goes on the other side. Put this thing back on. I've never seen a car with this. Welcome to the world of Volkswagen. The RTV that I'm using for the valve cover is the Permatech Ultra Gray, and this little tube here. And I will be putting it on the head on the large side, but I'll put it in these little crevices, or these little corners here on the side away from the cam gears. It doesn't take much. A little dab will do you. So that's what the RTV looks like that I put on the side away from the cam gear. And that is what the RTV looks like on the side with the cam gear. Now I am going to carefully put the new valve cover gasket on. And now for the valve cover. According to the instructions on the RTV, you're supposed to hand tighten it till the RTV starts to squeeze out, let it cure for an hour, and then tighten down the rest of the way. So it is hand tight now, and unfortunately, you can't see that it started to squeeze out because of the way the valve cover is made. But I will let it sit for an hour before I come back and torque it to spec. So while the RTV is curing on the valve cover gasket, I can remove and clean the intake manifold gasket since I have a new one. And I don't know, it seems like they put some sort of silicone or gasket material on this. I don't know why you would do that. They just got silicone happy. Maybe they were getting some leaks. Yeah, like, that's crazy. Oh well, I'm gonna do my best to clean it up. I try to keep my hands clean, but sometimes there's nothing better than having bare skin to rub up against this. See, if I still have my glove on, I could not feel that is still a little rough. And I bet lightly scraping the blade across it will yield some. See, look at that. This is the sort of thing I like doing when I'm not in a rush. So a good seal on this is important because you don't want any intake leaks, and that could cause you to idle high. There's a chance that my idle code is at least in part due to a poor seal on this, because I know I've taken this off, a couple times since I've had the car, and I did not pay much attention to the gasket. The gasket was there, so I called it good, but you never know. All right, I'm gonna call that clean enough. Now I'm gonna move on to the engine side. I'm gonna come over here and play the same game. Yeah, I'm convinced they put something on there. I'm gonna come back with a shop vac and suck out any debris that may fall in there. I bought this years ago but rarely use it, and I think this is the perfect time to do it. Oh man, that makes it a lot easier. That is some kind of silicone. I'm able to rub it off. I wonder if brake parts cleaner will break it down. Wow, that worked. That worked like a charm. Might even hit it one more time. All right, I'm gonna call that good. So now I'm gonna tighten the valve cover nuts. The manual says 10 Newton meters or 89 inch-pounds. So that's what I'm gonna do. Now I guess I can put back on the intake manifold. See if there's anything I'm missing. Oh, before I do that, Let me do this. So I think the move would be to take this off, connect this section to the intake manifold, then put it back on. Let's see how easy that actually is. I will eventually learn the ways of this car. I would have saved myself a headache, but now I can connect this and this while the intake manifold, or the upper intake manifold, is off the car. Then I can flip it over and connect this. So I did learn something that will help me the next time. Bam. So now I don't have to worry about the underneath, and I can just put the intake manifold back on. It's funny, everything is easier if you've done it once. And I'm glad, because time is very valuable. All right, now time to hook up all the hoses. So now I just gotta put everything back together. I'm not a fan of running with the timing covers off. But I don't drive this every day, and it'll only be a few days before the new parts arrive, so I should be all right. I'm gonna give it one last start to make sure that it doesn't squeak. It's sat for couple days, and if I still had the previous issue, it would squeak now. So I'm gonna start it up and see how it goes. I can't say I ever noticed that ticking, but the squeak is gone, so I'm gonna call it good. With that done, I can't wait to drive it. I always seem to want to drive a car more after it's sat for a while, but it does still need quite a bit of work. I have some suspension upgrades planned, as well as some electrical changes. And if you'd like to follow along, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. Take care.